I knew that the day without wind that I could use for recording outside will come. Here it is. Enough is enough. You don't make your espresso properly. Farmers struggle. Mocha pot is not good enough for outdoor brewing. The Yemenian coffee is too expensive. Don't use old coffee. Tap water is not good for coffee. Jeez, Michalina, so negative. Time to lighten things up. Yes, I made this channel because of how broken, challenging, and underestimated some coffee matters might be. And I hope one day, at least one person will watch one video and acknowledge one issue that applies to coffee industry, and together we can make a small changes, one coffee cup at a time. But that hope comes from passion and love, so rather positive things. To remind myself that coffee industry and coffee community are things that inspire me every day, I want to present few very positive projects today. Projects who come from people who believe in changing things for better, and thanks to or for the coffee, they bring tons of light into the industry. Let's go! Women. According to International Coffee Organization's report, women play a massive role in coffee production. Female label contribution, so for example picking cherries during the harvest season, can reach in some areas even up to 90%. Between 20 to 30% of coffee plantations are led by women. They quite often share the responsibility between being a worker on a plantation but also looking after the household. And yet, researchers proved, piesek, that there is a big gap between the equality in salary, access to education, or simply just having a chance to be respected player on the coffee market between women and men. Yep, you started on a very, very positive note, Michalina. Besides, as farms are quite often placed in very rural areas, in the middle of mountains, outside of any city, there is very limited access to medical care. Women quite often are simply not financially independent, or they just simply cannot afford to do simply checkups on their bodies. Unfortunately, that leads to many serious problems when it comes to women's health. And for example, 500,000 women die each year because of the cervical cancer. This illness can be 100% treatable if it was only caught in early stages and if the treatment was given. Many women working in coffee production have no possible chance to check if they're not sick. Thankfully, here's the bright side. There are charities that acknowledge this dramatic issue. They want to make a change. Grounds for Health is a non-profit organization that was founded 25 years ago, and since then they managed to provide the scanning for nearly 150,000 women working in the plantation, and they treated 12,000 of them. They work in Ethiopia, Tanzania, Nicaragua, Mexico, Peru and Kenya, and support women not only from the coffee industry but also from the plantations of tea, cocoa or cut flowers. Awesome job! Kids, the youngest generations of coffee producing families, don't want to stay and work on the plantations. They don't see it as a profitable source of income. It's hard to disagree with them, as today most of the coffee is sold for less than they've actually spent on growing it. The lack of education on how to grow the coffee in a sustainable way leads to smaller yields. Small yields leads to less income. Less income equals less money to invest back in the plantation. So for example, in education. And it is a closed circle. But is it impossible to break? Not for some people. Coffee Kids is a program that works directly with the youth of coffee production. They believe that coffee's future is in the next generation's hands, and they're so damn right. They've already supported over 700 kids from Colombia, Guatemala, Tanzania, and Honduras by training, mentoring, and seed financing. They empowered the young ones to use their energetic spirits to make the coffee as a product that they are proud of, and to make the coffee being their source of secure income. Go Kids! Coffee families. For 36 years, Guatemala was experiencing a civil war. Officially, it finished in 1996, but even today, some of the regions in the country still struggle to recover from that. As much as 90% of population in some areas in Guatemala lives in poverty. Producing the coffee is quite often the only thing that they know how to do, and that way, the only thing that they can have some money from. Coffee Trust is an organization that helps farmers to survive. Their recent project was introducing honey production as a side income for farmers to have any money during the coffee production season. That could lead to improving at least a little bit farmers' livelihood. But they also focus on training programs, women in coffee industry, or for example, they also contribute really strongly to recovery from the disease called the coffee leaf rust. Because of the climate change, the disease spreads very quickly in the larger and larger areas, and it causes coffee leaves trees to fall. That way, they cannot produce any coffee beans, and it destroyed thousands of coffee crops. The country experienced the biggest wave of the coffee leaf rust in 2014. By 2019, thanks to Coffee Trust, the coffee production was brought back to pretty much the same level as it used to be before the pandemic. And let me just tell you that it was pretty impressive success, because the disease lowered the coffee yield down to 20% of what it used to be. They managed to bring all the missing 80% back, and that is awesome job. Without Coffee Trust, farmers would have struggled for way longer, if it was even possible for them to recover, if they had to deal with it on their own. New technologies. This one is something that I only came across while I was preparing myself and doing a little research for this episode. And the project is kind of done, but I think it's worth to bring our attention to it, because this is how the world should be using the new technologies. ACCORD. ACCORD. It stands for Advanced Coffee Crop Organization in Rural Development. And as long and perhaps quite scientific it sounds, this is actually pretty simple technology and very easy to understand. Simple technology, like everyone like you could come up with that, Michalina. All you need is a satellite and a phone. Who doesn't have a satellite? Jokes aside, ACCORD was a case study of UK Space Agency. And their goal was to improve farmers' ability to grow coffee in a more sustainable way when it comes to fighting against weather. They wanted them to have better control over unexpected weather conditions happening throughout the season. Weather patterns used to be very predictable. They knew exactly when to expect the heavy rains or no rains at all, or when to start fertilizing their soils. But with the results of climate change, the weather patterns are not patterns anymore. They are just occasional events of rains, or very difficult to predict droughts that are so prolonged that they just destroy the whole crops. Not being able to time their action accordingly to the weather led to lower income. People living on a plantation, they quite often don't have an access to internet to check up the weather, or it was just simply not reliable. But thanks to ACCORD and its data of highly localized weather, it's all based on GPS and satellite images, or mapping the crops, agricultural knowledge and ground observations, farmers from Rwanda and Kenya, because that's where the program was organized, could receive a simple text messages with very well-timed information about what they can expect from the weather and how they can prepare themselves for it, what kind of steps they are advised to be taken to protect their coffee. Like, a good morning, Mr. Farmer. Today we are expecting heavy rain, so you better find something that you can cover your coffee that dries outside for next couple of days, or something like that. The study was being funded till February this year and brought so much positive feedback from farmers. It helped them a lot to maneuver between the unexpected weather conditions. And if I'm not wrong, the inventors of the technology of the program are in the process of looking for more funds to keep on doing what they were doing to help farmers to increase their incomes and improve their livelihoods. I do hope so much that they will find someone, some organizations that are gonna jump with them on board, because this project rocks. Baristas. Now, I know that I usually bring your attention to farmers, as they are, in my eyes, first, but most often forgotten about step in the coffee production. But if it wasn't for the last little piece of chain of coffee production, the baristas, the fruits of farmers' work, wouldn't have the chance to reach to people who come for a coffee to the cafe. And maybe not that often and not as dramatic as farmer's job can be, barista's job is also quite often underestimated. And I know it because I myself am a barista, and sometimes I have days when I sit down and think, man, this is rough. This job is not rewarded at the best salary ever. It can be both physically and mentally tiring. To be good at this, you have to have a really high level of skills, you be able to invest in yourself, and you have to have a tons of patience to all kinds of customers. By the way, that applies to pretty much every single position in the hospitality industry. Today, many cafes struggle because of the results of the restrictions put on them after the current pandemic. So baristas have all the right to struggle in staying in their positions as well. But there are people who want to make a social impact in that matter. And one of the non-profit organizations that support baristas in their hard times is a platform called AM Not A Barista. They do a great job in connecting people through coffee. Their motto says, "Humanity runs on coffee." And how true is this? Their goal is to raise awareness of the importance of the barista's role in connecting coffee to coffee drinkers. They see us baristas as the coffee ambassadors, and I can understand why. Where, if not in a cafe, is the best place to talk about coffee? And who is not the best person to do so if not a barista talking to a customer? If you're happy to find a passionate barista, they can introduce you to how fragile and how delicate the coffee and coffee industry as a whole is. They can help you understand what stands behind the cup of coffee that you are being given by that person. So without baristas, you wouldn't be able to drink that coffee in a cafe. And so I Am Not a Barista sets really fun fundraisers to help baristas stay in their occupation. For example, they created a great brewing guide, so collection of different kind of coffee recipes, some made by the most popular coffee celebrities out there, so you can buy it not only to improve your brewing skills but also to support baristas in need. How cool is that? Now I will leave the links to all the organizations that I was talking about in the description of this episode. Feel free to go ahead and check them out. Maybe you feel like helping a little bit as well, especially now when the Christmas time approaches and everyone feels a little bit more generous than throughout the whole year. Or you just simply want the coffee and coffee people to thrive. But you don't have to do this. You don't have to go to organization's website. You can also just simply buy a bag of better quality beans. Small farmers holders that need us the most are definitely not appreciated enough by the coffee concern that they sell their coffees to the supermarket. So your go-to place are the small local roasteries. They do appreciate the coffee farmers better. They acknowledge the problem and they want to support them. You buy coffee from them, you make an actual impact, and you can also drink much better brew. Peace and coffee.